In 1967, this famous race car took its first win at the British Grand Prix, and in its lifespan managed to propel 5 championship-winning drivers to 12 championship-winning titles. Known also as the first GP car to be powered by a Ford Cosworth V8, the engine wasn't cradled or bolted to the car using engine mounts. See, part of Lotus's genius engineering was that they were one of the first to use the engine block as part of the frame.
If you're going to make a V8, there's no way that you can sensibly get a chassis, a tubular structure around the engine or pods down the side.
Now we get to the interesting bit. We bolt the engine onto the car, as you can see. Yes. And now we bolt the rest of the suspension on the back of the engine, because the engine itself is forming part of the structure of the car. Right. And of course, it holds it all together. Now, if we can get that mounted on there, get those picking up on those bolts, and we hang the rear suspension on the back there, we've got a complete structure right through the car.
And this allowed the car to be tighter, smaller, and stiffer. There is no doubt that these pre-war era race cars are a type of beautiful that will never come again. Personally, I'd love a 1950s barrel-bodied Bugatti as a grocery getter, but that likely won't ever happen. Luckily for me, I enjoy a hobby that allows me to create my dream cars. Join me now as I share with you how I put together this RC model that is heavily influenced by a Lotus 49. We first start with the chassis or frame. I chose to use a Tamiya F104 as I already owned it. I found it for a great deal a while back on Marketplace, and it's been sitting ever since. However, the older classic F1 cars have a much shorter wheelbase than what I had. Once I got over the extra length in my mind, I started to search for available bodies. I found a company that 3D prints you an entire car if you'd like, and that got me excited, but I wasn't about to fork over the cash for something like that. I then found a gentleman on YouTube by the name of SD Racing HK, and he has created a kit that utilizes the Tamiya F103 GT to make it a really awesome looking car. But he told me he's back ordered and won't be back in business for a while. Eventually, the last company I found was a company called Phoenix Racing at Phoenix Racing Shop, which seemed to be offering an entire kit including bodies and frames with the correct wheelbases. The cars look very high quality, so again, I wasn't interested in spending more than my low budget, so I opted to finally order a body from them after spending months thinking about it. The body came fairly quickly, which urged me to start the project sooner than anticipated. This wasn't supposed to be a project until winter started, but I just couldn't wait to look at it on my shelf, all completed. With the goal in mind, I started cutting the body so I could fit it. I ran into a few issues here with, first, the rear friction plate adjuster. It was interfering with the engine section of the body. No big deal, I cut a hole in the engine. It's going to be a runner anyways. But once that was drilled out, the actual shock at the standard angle was too high, and the only option here was to relocate the shock under the plate. However, this does stiffen up the shock movement as I've removed the leverage it had at the angle before. The body was designed for Phoenix's own F1 car frame, and their frame has carbon body stays for you to secure the body onto. Well, my Tamiya did not have these, so I opted to use two-way tape to hold the lower portion of the body on the chassis, and some Velcro to hold the two pieces of body together. The top portion sort of hooks onto the bottom at the front and then slips snugly under the rear friction plate adjuster. Then that allows me to clip these Velcro pieces that I put down here together. After a lot more cutting around the fenders and the front nose section, I was finally able to start painting. I chose to use Tamiya Racing Green PS22. I prepared a yellow as well, but soon noticed that the sticker sheet includes the yellow parts of the livery, so no need to worry about yellow paint. I could paint it anyways, but I think that's too much work for something that will likely meet a wall on its first outing. Once the body dried, I sprayed silver on the inside, because that's apparently what people do. To paint the engine in the rear black, I simply used an X-Acto blade to cut the exterior film off the body, removed it, and proceeded to paint the outside. Once the black was dry, I hit it with a layer of flat clear paint to dull it up. Same goes for the cockpit. For the driver's suit, I mixed Tamiya's neutral gray and buff together to make my own dirty gray racing suit. I then used a dry brush technique to brush black into the creases and crevices of the driver's suit. I used a similar technique with silver on the engine highlights. There is an inaccuracy here as well. You see, back then, they didn't have seat belts, but this guy has a 5-point harness. I searched for many pictures of the drivers and their helmets during this era and found many of them to be white. So I went with a white helmet and attempted to make it dirty looking by doing a half-assed paint job on his helmet. I mixed black and buff to make his face covering, and used buff also to make his leather strap for his goggles. I think it turned out pretty well. What do you think? And don't hold back, give me your best criticism. Now with the car finished, I'll prepare another video showing you running gear details and running footage. Until then, thanks for joining me. Make it a great day and peace out.